Right now, somewhere, a 22-year-old is standing in a coffee line, phone out, thumb hovering, ordering the same $5 oat milk latte they order every single morning. They don't think about it. Nobody thinks about it. $5 is small enough to be invisible. It's the exact size of money that never makes it into a budget, never gets a second thought, never feels like a decision at all. But here's what nobody in that line knows. That invisible $5, repeated every day for 40 years, is the difference between retiring with a number that embarrasses you and retiring with a number that changes your entire family's future. Not because $5 is secretly a lot of money. It isn't. It's the amount you'd find in a coat pocket and not bother mentioning. That's exactly why it works, and exactly why almost nobody uses it. Small enough to ignore, which means small enough to never fight yourself over, which means small enough to actually keep doing for 40 straight years without quitting. Same $5. Two completely different lives. Let's watch both of them happen, side by side, from 22 all the way to 62, and see exactly where and why they split. You're 22. First real paycheck just landed. You're standing in that same coffee line tomorrow morning, and instead of tapping order, you close the app. You open a different one, a brokerage app you downloaded last week and haven't touched. You move $5 into a total market index fund. Not a stock pick. Not a hot tip from a group chat. Just a tiny slice of ownership in thousands of companies at once. The confirmation screen says, balance, $5. It's almost funny. $5 sitting in an investment account looks like a joke, like you're playing pretend at being an investor. There's no rush, no dopamine hit, no lottery ball feeling. Just $5 quiet dollars doing nothing you can see. You set up an automatic transfer so it happens without you. Every morning, $5 leaves your checking account before you're awake enough to talk yourself out of it. By the end of the month, that's about $150 gone from your spending. Money you genuinely don't miss, because you never see it long enough to want it. Your coworker, we'll call him Marcus, does the opposite. Same paycheck, same coffee line, same $5. He keeps ordering the latte. Some days it's a rideshare instead. Some days it's a phone case, a food delivery fee, a round of drinks he doesn't remember by Friday. Different wrapper, same $5, gone the same way every time. Spent in a moment and forgotten by the next one. Neither of you is doing anything wrong. You're both just answering the same tiny question differently, every single day, without realizing it's a question at all. And neither of you will feel the answer for years. Year 1. 12 months in, you check the account. $1,891. You put in $1,825. The market added the rest, $66. $66 for doing absolutely nothing except not canceling the transfer. You mention it to Marcus over lunch. He asks how much you've made. You tell him. $66? In a year? He laughs, not meanly, just genuinely amused. I spend that by Wednesday. He's not wrong, and that's exactly the point. He's not stupid with money. He's just never been shown what $5 a day actually adds up to on the other side of a screen he never opens. He orders the same latte the next morning without thinking about it, same as always. You order nothing, same as always. Neither of you feels like anything happened. The $66 isn't the story yet. The habit is. You've now done the same small thing 365 times in a row without breaking it once. You didn't white-knuckle your way through it, you didn't budget for it, you didn't even really decide it again after the first time. It just became the thing that happens every morning, like brushing your teeth. That's the part that actually compounds first, before the money ever does. Not the dollars. The behavior. If someone had told you on day one that a year of doing this would net you $66, you probably wouldn't have started. It sounds pointless written down like that, but nobody experiences a year as a number. You experience it as 365 separate mornings, each one costing you nothing you can feel. The $66 was never the point of year 1. Proving to yourself that you could go a full year without breaking the chain was. Year 5. You're 27. The balance reads $10,496. You've contributed $9,125 of your own money. The market has quietly stacked on another $1,371. Money you never worked a single hour for. That same month, Marcus sends you a screenshot. A token he found on a forum, up 340% in 9 days. He's put $3,000 in. He tells you your boring fund makes in a year what his coin makes before lunch. He's right about the speed. He's wrong about what happens next. You text back that you're good. He sends a fire emoji and buys more. A few weeks later, he sends another screenshot, this time of a different coin, then a third a month after that. Always the next thing, always the one that's about to take off. You notice he never sends you a screenshot of the account balance itself, only the daily gains. 11 weeks after that first message, the coin is down 88%, and he stops bringing it up entirely. You keep doing the least exciting thing a person can do with money. Nothing. You just let the transfer run, the same $5, the same fund, the same quiet Tuesday morning it always is. There's a version of this year where you take the bait, where $10,000 feels like enough of a cushion to gamble a slice of it on the next thing that promises to turn 5 years of patience into 5 weeks of luck. You think about it, honestly, more than once. But you've already watched what Marcus's screenshots look like 6 months later, and you've never once seen him send you one of those. Year 10, 32 years old. Balance, $25,215. Total contributed, $18,250. Growth, nearly $7,000. Then the market has a bad year, a real one. Headlines start using words like correction and sell-off. Financial news anchors use the tone people usually reserve for weather disasters. Your balance drops by almost a fifth in a matter of weeks. On paper, you lose more in a month than you contributed all year. Marcus, watching the same headlines, pulls what's left of his money into cash. "At least I'm safe now," he says. And he means it. It sounds responsible. It sounds like the smart move in the moment. You don't do anything. Not because you're brave, because you're not paying close enough attention to panic. The $5 keeps leaving your account every morning, buying the same fund, now on sale, the same way it bought it when the price was higher. You're not trying to be clever. You're just too on autopilot to stop, and it turns out that's its own kind of protection. A year later, the market has fully recovered. Marcus is still in cash, waiting for a better time to get back in, that never quite arrives, because there's never a headline announcing it. Your boring habit bought the discount without you ever noticing there was one, and it's already gone by the time anyone agrees it was safe. You don't tell Marcus that the fund he watched you keep feeding through the worst months is now worth more than it would have been if the crash had never happened at all, because the shares you bought while it was down are the ones doing the most work now. You don't say it to be smug. You genuinely never think about it again until years later, when the numbers make it obvious on their own. Year 15, 37. Balance, $45,861. You've put in $27,375. The market's contribution, over $18,000, is now closing in on the size of everything you've personally saved. This is the year the shape of things starts to shift. For the first 14 years, your money grew mostly because you kept feeding it. Every dollar in the account was basically a dollar you'd put there yourself, plus a little. Now it's starting to grow because of its own size, earning a return on money that itself came from an earlier return. You're no longer just planting seeds one at a time. The field itself is starting to do work on its own, whether you're watching it or not. You don't feel richer, exactly. Your car is the same one you've had for 6 years. Your apartment hasn't changed. You still order the same coffee line nothing every morning, but there's a number sitting quietly in the background of your life that wasn't there before, and it didn't cost you anything you can actually point to and remember giving up. Year 20, 42 years old. Balance, $74,825. Contributions, $36,500. Growth, $38,325. For the first time, the market has now handed you more than you've ever put in with your own hands. Marcus gets laid off that spring. Company restructuring? No warning. The kind of thing that happens to good employees for reasons that have nothing to do with how good they were. He has almost nothing behind him. The $5 a day went to 1,000 small, forgettable comforts over the years, each one gone the moment it arrived, none of them adding up to anything he can point to now that he needs it. He's stressed in a way you recognize but don't share, checking his phone for job postings at a lunch you're paying for. You have a number you've never touched and never planned to touch, sitting there quietly for exactly this kind of year. You don't mention it. You don't need to. You just quietly cover lunch a few times that month, let him vent about the job market, and go home to the same $5 leaving your account the next morning like it always has. It occurs to you, driving home, that the number was never really about a retirement decades away. It's a wall between you and exactly the kind of year Marcus is having right now. Not a fortune, not a windfall, just a quiet buffer that means a bad spring doesn't have to become a bad year. You didn't build it for this. You built it without a reason at all, which is somehow the only reason it was there when you needed it. Year 25, 47. Balance, $115,418. You've contributed $45,625 across a quarter century. $5 at a time, almost none of it felt, almost none of it remembered as a sacrifice, because it never really was one. Financial headlines that year are grim. Most people your age have barely anything saved. Retirement feels further away than ever for the average earner. The math no longer works the way it used to for people with ordinary jobs. You read them at breakfast and realize you are the average earner they're describing. Same salary bracket as everyone in that headline. Same rent, same groceries, same job title, roughly, as most of the people the article is worried about. The only difference is what you did with a coffee-sized decision, repeated without exception, for 25 years, while everyone around you was living the exact same life on the exact same income and never noticing the gap quietly opening underneath it. Year 30, 52 years old. Balance, $172,390. Total contributed, $54,750. The market has more than tripled what you actually earned and put in with your own money. This is the year the math flips for good. In a strong year now, the account grows more on its own, just from its own size sitting in the market, than you could add by hand, even if you doubled your daily contribution overnight. You've officially become a passenger on something you built years ago and mostly forgot about. The thing is now bigger than the act of building it ever was. You don't talk about the number. Not at dinner parties, not with your kids, not with Marcus, who long ago stopped asking about that little app and just assumes correctly that you're doing fine. Year 35, 57. Balance, $252,288. Contributed across 35 years, $63,875. Small enough, spread out enough, to lose inside a couch cushion if you tried to picture all of it as loose cash sitting somewhere. The other $188,000 plus was never yours to earn in the first place. It was time's contribution, not yours. You just had to leave the room, stay out of its way, and let it work while you lived a completely ordinary life on top of it. If you'd stopped at year 30, thinking you'd already done enough, you would have walked away from more money than you'd contributed in the entire 35 years before it. The last 5 years alone, doing nothing different than the first 5, outgrew the first 3 decades combined. That's not a coincidence of good timing. That's just what happens when a snowball this size keeps rolling for one more stretch. Year 40. The reveal. 62 years old. 40 years since that first coffee line decision. The balance reads $364,325. Sit with the breakdown, because it's the whole story in 2 numbers. Of that $364,325, the amount that actually came out of your pocket, $5 at a time, roughly 14,600 mornings in a row, is $73,000. The remaining $291,325 is pure growth. Money you never earned an hour of, never watched arrive, never felt leave anyone's pocket, and never once had to think about. You didn't pick a winning stock. You didn't time a crash or catch a rally. You skipped one small, forgettable purchase over and over for 4 decades and let the smallest amount imaginable sit in the most unremarkable place possible for the longest time possible. That's the entire mechanism. There's no second secret hiding underneath it, no trick you missed, no faster version available to someone smarter than you. Marcus retires the same year. Same job, same salary path the whole way through. Decent, hard-working guy who never missed a shift and never did anything wrong with his money in any way he could point to. His version of the $5 also added up to $73,000 over 40 years. The exact same money, dollar for dollar, that you put in. He just spent his instead of investing it. Lattes, ride shares, forgettable little upgrades, thousands of small moments of pleasure he genuinely enjoyed and can't individually remember today. You both stood in the same line and made the same size decision, thousands of times, for 40 years. He has a lifetime of small comforts to show for it. You have those same comforts mostly, plus $291,000 that quietly worked a second job behind your life the entire time, without ever asking you for anything more than $5 in your absence. Nobody can point to the exact day your paths split. There wasn't one big moment, no single choice either of you would remember making. There were just 2 answers to the same tiny question, asked every single morning, until the answers stopped being choices at all and quietly turned into 2 completely different lives. Conclusion. That's the uncomfortable, beautiful truth about $5. It's too small to feel like it matters, which is exactly why almost nobody protects it. And exactly why the few people who do end up somewhere completely different from everyone else standing in that same line, ordering the same thing, on the same ordinary morning. You were never going to notice the $5 leaving either way. The coffee doesn't feel expensive. The transfer doesn't feel like sacrifice. The only thing that was ever actually up to you was where that invisible money went, into a moment that vanishes in minutes, or into a machine that spends 40 years quietly turning it into something else entirely. Somewhere right now, a 22-year-old is standing in that same coffee line, phone out, thumb hovering. They don't know it yet, but they're not deciding what to drink. They're deciding who they're going to be at 62, and they won't feel the decision at all. Not today, not for years, maybe not for decades. And that's really the whole warning and the whole invitation at once. Nothing about this required more money than you already have, more time than you already spend standing in that line, or more discipline than closing one app and opening another. The only rare thing in this entire story is doing it for 40 years without an audience, without applause, and without ever really knowing day to day that it was working at all. If this reframed the way you think about the small stuff, the coffee, the delivery fee, the forgettable little $5 charges, hit subscribe. Because next week we're breaking down exactly how to automate this without ever having to think about it again. And in the comments, I want one honest number. What's your $5? What's the small thing you buy on autopilot without ever noticing? Drop it below. I read everyone, and I'll feature the best answers in next week's video.